Hello and welcome back to this series where I review all the games that I played in 2021 month by month. Today we're looking at the games that I played in September, and those are Skullgirls Second Encore, The Walking Dead The Final Season, Blackwood Crossing, Sense, A Cyberpunk Ghost Story, and Resident Evil. So without further ado, let's get on to the first game. And the first game that we'll be talking about will be Skullgirls Second Encore. Now, I played a lot of games on this channel. I've played everything really, like from walking sims to platformers to first-person shooters to everything in between. But one genre which I haven't really delved into are the fighting games, and that's mainly just because I haven't played enough, really. I think the only one that I have any kind of relation to was Street Fighter, and that's because I played it a lot back then when I was a kid. But I decided, time for a change. So I decided to pick up Skullgirls since I heard it was, very fun, very memorable, and just a good fighting game, and they certainly weren't wrong, because it is. So as you can see from the footage here, Skullgirls is very distinct. Like, I don't think there's any fighting game quite like it. I mean, there may be, but I don't know. But every character is distinct, their playstyle was memorable, and I don't really know what to say. It's just look at this. It looks great. Obviously, with the animations of each character and even the backgrounds. But seeing as how I am me and I have nobody else to play with, we decided, well, not we, I decided there's no really point in just going through, the AI battles and whatnot, battling the AI. So I decided, let's check out some of the story modes for each character. And they range from fine to okay to good to great. Because I think it's mainly just because with, which I'm going to call the base 8. So these are the ones that started out, you got Philia, Cerebella, Peacock, all that. But all of them, their stories aren't that memorable, they're not very distinct, which is a shame considering Skullgirls is pretty distinct. But with the DLC characters that come along, aside from the two clones, they are great. Like Squiggly, Beowulf, Big Band, all of them. Like, they're just really good to play through. They have a very charming story to them, they have very charming characters, and I think that's how you can describe Skullgirls, really, charming. But enough about that, I've rambled on for too long. Let's get to the next game. Next up, we have The Walking Dead The Final Season. Now, I think that the Walking Dead games, specifically the Telltale ones, are great. I mean, we had Season 1, which was a masterpiece. Then we have Season 2, which was pretty good, not as good as Season 1. Then we have A New Frontier, which is a new frontier. And now we have the conclusion, the final season. And while I don't think it's as good as the first season, I think it comes close. I think it's the best out of the sequels, I guess you can call them, because there's just so much going on. Like, obviously, you see how the entire franchise has evolved, because now Clementine, who was a child back in the first season, is now a fully fledged young adult in the new season. And it's not just in terms of maturity and story, it's also in the visuals, because as you can see, it's a vast improvement from the original. And you can really see how Telltale has evolved from the years to come, despite, the hardships that the company faced. But that's besides the point. But enough about the franchise and all that. Let's talk about how exactly the final season is not as good as the original, but up there. Does that even make sense? I don't know. So, the first thing is the main selling point and the main strength of the Walking Dead Telltale games, which are the characters. And I can say that we have a really good cast here, because this is set in a boarding school for delinquent youth, and that really gives a fresh, unique take on the cast. And every character is unique, we have some characters like Marlon, Lewis, Violet, Tennessee, Lily, who's returning, Abel, Minerva, all of them, and of course Clem and AJ. AJ is actually very, I don't know how to explain it. Basically, AJ is very developed now, because obviously he was just used as a MacGuffin in the previous seasons, and now he's a fully fledged character, you know, and he has to know the difference between right and wrong, and your actions mold him into what he's going to become, even though we won't see what he becomes because of, you know, this is the final season. But aside from that, I really like The Walking Dead, the final season. I also felt that, I think the one main gripe I have with it was some of your choices did not really matter in the end, and also I wasn't a big fan of the combat, you know, like, obviously this is very different because we usually have a camera from a fixed angle for the other Walking Dead games. Now it's a sort of first-person perspective, and I felt that was really jarring, especially in the combat, which back in the previous games was sometimes first/third person, and now it's just first person, and you'd be lucky if you get some button mashing and whatnot. And now I feel it's a bit constant. You know, not as constant as A New Frontier, but that's besides the point. And I'm going on too long here. The Walking Dead, the final season, while it isn't as good as the original, it's close. So now, with all that rambling out of the way, and this video is going to go on for too long, I just know it, let's get on to the next game. Next up, we have Blackwood Crossing. So Blackwood Crossing is... I don't really know. I think the best way I can describe it is, for me personally, I want to like it. I want to like it a lot more than I do. But the problem is, I just don't. Something in my mind just is not clicking with me with this game. Like, I keep saying that it's very easy to, you know, fuck up a walking sim, which, you know, this is. But now I'm just starting to, you know, rethink that mindset and whatnot. Because Blackwood Crossing isn't bad, and it isn't great, it's just fine, you know. I feel like with the right scope, I guess, with the right presentation, it can be something great, you know, and it has some interesting ideas. But the thing is, it doesn't work for me. Like, I know some other people might love this game, some other people might, you know, say it's the best game, one of the best games they ever played and whatnot, but no, that's just not the case for me. But I'm repeating myself. So Blackwood Crossing does deal with stuff like, you know, grief, abandonment and whatnot, because, you know, it's a walking sim, you gotta have some heavy shit to talk about, because that's the general rule of thumb, isn't it? But I mean, going into that, I didn't think it was going to be about grief. I actually thought it was going to be about dementia or something. Because I remember playing, I was like, I'm calling it right now, dementia. But no, that wasn't it. And I feel like that's kind of a missed opportunity or whatnot. Because even though it does explore grief, it doesn't really explore it fully. Most of the time it's just plodding around with your younger brother, the character's younger brother, Finn, and just chasing after him and whatnot, and it's just dull, you know. Blackwood Crossing isn't bad, but it isn't that good. So, with that said, on to the next game. Next we have Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story. But before we get into the actual game, I kind of want to mention the controversy that came with this game, as it's arguably one of the most interesting things about it. So, the developers of this game, Top Hat Studios, released the game, or at least released a few videos showcasing it on Twitter. That wonderful site that we all know and all love, and as Twitter usually does, they try to cancel the game, you know, saying, oh, it's problematic because there's big boobies in it. But the Top Hat Studios, the developers, they just went, yeah, there's big boobs in it, so what, you know? Doesn't detract from the game, and quite kindly, piss off. And I respect that. I respect what they've done with that. I'm just putting it out there, because that story is more interesting than the game, because I honestly do not have a lot to talk about with this game. This is going to be a short one, you know. I mean, it plays alright, it's a simple, I guess, point-and-click adventure game. Uh, the the animations of it are a bit stilted, you know, particularly in the walking animation of our main character, and it's got a very interesting, you know, setting, a backdrop with a cyberpunk version of Hong Kong, I guess, or a version of Hong Kong, and unfortunately, there's just nothing really going for it, you know. I mean, you battle ghosts in it, but it mostly consists of just running away from ghosts. Like, I'm sure there's a combat bit in it, but I just haven't gone to that bit yet, and I don't think I ever will, because I'm not sure I ever want to play Sansa Cyberpunk Ghost Story. Not because it's bad, but because there just isn't much with it. I mean, aside from it, what else is there? There's like a Count Dankula cameo, which, while based, is not very interesting. So, yeah, that was Sansa Cyberpunk Ghost Story. Let's get into the final game of the month, shall we? And finally, we have Resident Evil, specifically the remake version that was originally on the GameCube. So, Resident Evil, this game is one of, if not the oldest game that I review, not only for this show, but also on this channel. And Resident Evil is a classic. Not only the game itself, but the franchise. It's up there with stuff like Silent Hill, you know? It's one of the big giants in terms of horror games. And you're gonna have to play a Resi game once in your life. Now, I've originally done that. I played Resi 7 back in, what was it? April. And I can't think of anything else. But I decided to pick up, because it was either a toss-up. I wanted to play another Resi game, and I didn't have the money for Resi Village, so it was either going to be a toss-up between this and Resi 4, and I decided to pick up Resi 1. So, on first impressions, I don't want to say it's overrated, because I don't think it is. It's just, I don't think it lives up to the hype. I'm basically saying it's overrated. But, basically, I like it, you know? It's Resident Evil. I'm gonna like it. I mean, it's hammy, but it really does the horror well. Like, I'm not saying this isn't a creepy game, because there's certainly, it has its moments, like the whole atmosphere and the Crimson Heads, which are terrifying as fuck if you were not aware of what these things were, like I was. But I do think it's kind of shown its age, and I'm not sure if this is controversial to say, and even then I'm saying it right now because this is the remake. Though specifically saying there were like 2 different characters to play through, because there were Chris and there were Jill. I picked Jill because she was better. She was obviously going to be better. Many people choose Jill, and yeah, I do like the gameplay, you know, the whole survival aspect. It really does bring home and how this is one of the greats of horror games, one of the must-plays. But I played it, and I thought, yeah, it was alright. Nothing else. So, quite underwhelmingly, those are the games I played in September. Tune in next time, where we'll be going through the games that I played in October. And just a heads up, surprisingly, there aren't any horror games. So, yeah, see ya.